After buying and selling over 1,000 rental properties, today's guest has noticed something fascinating. The investors who build the most wealth don't necessarily have the most money. They just tend to do one thing a little bit different than anyone else. So, if you've ever wondered why some investors build massive portfolios while others stay stuck on the sidelines, you are going to want to hear this conversation. Welcome back to Passively Rich with Rentals podcast, where we talk about real estate investing, passive income, and building long term wealth through rental properties. I'm your host, Melissa Nash, and I've helped thousands of investors purchase over 500 million in passive real estate, and I have personally built a multi-million-dollar portfolio while raising 4 kids and buying most of my properties long distance. So, if you are someone who wants rent checks instead of paychecks, you are in the right place. Today, I am joined by returning guest Michael, who has bought and sold over 1,200 rental properties and has helped investors build portfolios from across the country. He also runs a property management company with about a 96% occupancy rate, and he spent years figuring out how to solve some of the biggest headaches that investors face. So, today we are going to dive into what exactly he has learned after helping thousands of investors buy and manage properties day to day. Let's get into it. Welcome to the show, Michael. I am so excited to have you here today. I've had you on here before, but welcome back.
Hey, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. I mean, it's a joy to be here.
Absolutely my pleasure again, because the last time that I had you on here, people resonated so much with what you said and kind of before we got on here, we were kind of talking just a little bit. And I think that you say things how they are and you don't really beat around the bush. And I think people really pick up on that and really do appreciate that. So tell
Well,
us,
yeah,
yeah.
for sure.
I was gonna say, tell us about yourself.
Well, I will, but I always think everyone's doing the best job they know how, right? It's kind of like when you have your first kid, you're like, I cook everything, I cut up groceries, I hunt for my own meats so that, it's organic for my kids or something. Then, like, I have 4 kids and 2 grandkids now. I'm 52 years old, and I'm like, you know what? It's fine. They'll survive. They can tough it out a little bit, sometimes. So my background, real quick, is really from the stock market. I was actually supposed to be successful in the stock market, and I was to some extent, but I just realized that it was just not the lifestyle I wanted, to be glued to a computer for 6 hours a day, and it never really built any enterprise value. Meaning, it wasn't really growing while I was sleeping, if you will, right? And so I was kind of introduced to real estate specifically. That kind of the dream was started by Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, and then I was talking with my a business partner in Indianapolis, who was an executive at UPS. And when UPS went public, so when companies go public, he used that money to buy 20 rentals. And I said, wait a second, 20 rentals. Back then that was 20 years ago. Times $1,000, that's 20 grand a month. He's like, yeah, that's what I did. And I'm like, tell me more. So that's when I first bought my first, 9, 10 homes. And since then I've bought, sold with my partners just over 1,200 homes, just over $100 million of rental real estate. And we're not stopping anytime soon. So I've really, really enjoyed it. I've helped a lot of people out. I think if you add up, everything, we probably direct deposit well over $1 million a month. And a lot of people use us as just an additional solution when they're planning their retirement. They're like, hey, I live here. This is a great place to live. The weather's great, but I can't get a great rate of return. So I provide that for a lot of my clients and your clients as well.
Oh my gosh, that was such a cool recap. I remember that you telling me that you were in kind of the stock market and, we kind of talked about that a little bit, but how you got started there with your partner. I feel like sometimes people, we mimic what we see. We always see like somebody, we're like, hey, wait a minute. What are you doing? And why are you so successful? And what is happening here right now? And we kind of tend to follow, we should follow successful people, right? Like replicate what they're doing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's so interesting you say that because I'm a part of an elite kind of men's mastermind group, and they say we are so like not disenchanted. So basically, when you hit social media, it's a cheap dopamine hit, is what we call it, right? You scroll through, and you're like, "Wow, look at that guy looks good, or that girl looks good, or look at the abs on that, or look at this, or they rented a Lamborghini for the day to go do some videos or something. Who knows? it's just, it's this dopamine hit. Whereas when you really realize it, I'm at that age where I told my 24-year-old son I have more weekends behind me than I do in front of me. And I'm not trying to be negative Nancy, but I had a friend die in his 50s of pancreatic cancer. My brother-in-law just passed away at age 61. I mean, this is going to happen to all of us, right? And so building a legacy that lasts, that'll take care of my family, is of great interest to me. And I'm more deliberate with it. People come to me and saying, what's the worst that can happen? And I'm like, there's not that, there's not that much that's wrong with real estate. So obviously I'm talking about a real estate show, but I got to tell you, after doing this for years and making thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars a month, is I would, if you were my best friend, Melissa, which you're quickly becoming, uh, I would say keep buying these things. The older version of you will thank you for doing it. That's what I'll say.
Well, yeah, let's dive into that because that's one thing that, one of my lender friends, Aaron Chapman, who's been on the show a bunch. We were actually just talking about him earlier. There's so many great lenders that we work with. By the way, reach out to me if you guys need a lender referral. I'm more than happy to send you to them. Link in the show notes. But he always says, it's not timing the market, it's time in the market. And I am so grateful for the Melissa who took action, over 10 years now and bought my first property out of state, sight unseen. That first like nervous, like, is this going to work? Should I do this? And kind of questioning everything. So, yeah, I mean, kind of the topic, this kind of goes really in line with what you and I were talking about, like what this episode should be is what is the hidden cost of waiting to get started in real estate? And what does that look like for you? I mean, you now, what you have done and what you have seen, what are you seeing right now with people who are just like hesitating and what are they afraid of and what's going on? Like kind of spill for us here.
Well, here's what happens sometimes is there's a book out there called You Can't Teach a Kid How to Ride a Bike in a Seminar. Okay. It's just balance can't be taught. You know what I mean? I remember pushing the tail end of my daughter's her pigtail 5-year-old seat in her pink bike. And she finally got it. She finally knew she could do it. Dad's taking off the training wheels. You got it. You got it. And the thing is that what I just had a conversation with a guy that overanalyzed a deal so far, and it's a good deal. It's not on fire. It's not the best deal I've ever done in my life, but definitely is a base hit. It's a good enough deal. You should buy it. And he analyzed it and he says, what happens if the maintenance is double? What happens if the tenant moves that way? You can talk yourself right out of this, buddy, if you want to. I mean, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right, right? So when you see that happening, when people overanalyze deals, they're missing the point. Okay. Is it the best interest rate environment now? No. Is it, what I mean? We could go with this, but is the hidden costs is, I've got many people that have 4 to 10 homes. Okay. Now we got some scale. Now we've got rent going up. Now we've got now we've got equity building. Now, all of a sudden, one guy been with me for only 5 years. He wanted to do a cash out refinance. And I think he had 30 grand of equity. He just didn't think it was worth that much. And he just bought it, 5 years. And as you know, from mortgages, you own, what do we call the doorknobs and the hinges after 5 years, basically. Right. But the mortgage guy said, no, you've got 30 or 50 grand of equity. The bottom line is this, is I always say this, have an older version of you advise you what to do, because if you keep over analyzing, or if you keep, in the trenches of thinking that a 401k or IRA is going to take care of you, you're not getting it. This engineer guy is very successful. I said, so there's no way your income really is going to go up or even raise. There's no way you're going to make double your money in the next 5 years. He goes, no, I work for a big company. I'm lucky if I make 4%. I said, so your job is going to break even with inflation. Is that right? I'm not being a jerk about this, right? He's like, well, I guess so. Okay, well, what are you doing outside of your contribution to the 401k? Well, how are you going to replace 20 grand a year in income? And then I see the other end of things when people have 10 or 15 homes and they're like, thank you, Michael. Thank you for getting me in this. It's been sometimes uncomfortable. Sometimes I had questions. Sometimes it wasn't perfect. But now I realize that when these are paid off in the next 7 years, holy cow, Michael, this is going to be fantastic. And I'm not the best with these numbers. Melissa, that's kind of your job. You get in the trenches with folks. And I just wish I could. It's kind of like my son. My son is at that level where he's like, Dad, thank you for putting me through the hard, like not answering all the questions for me. Thank you for letting me figure it out. And our investors don't have to do that. We do it all kind of for them, if you will. But they've got to meet us halfway. And that's the problem. People keep overanalyzing deals. They're not acting like, I don't mean to sound like sad or something, like we're all not getting out of this world alive. So get this stuff done and enjoy your life, enjoy your money. And you got to act like, you're maybe you got to act like you're going to die someday so you can enjoy living and enjoy building this passive income because it's fun, if you ask me.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things that I think about often, the reason why I got in real estate is because I saw my parents and my husband's parents, working until, in their 70s. And some of it is not by choice. I mean, if you want to by choice, like great. I'll probably be in real estate until, my 70s as long as I can because I love it and it's my choice. And there's a lot of power when it's your choice. But my biggest fear is the systems collapsing. And, we live in a capitalist country. We don't have a government that is guaranteed to take care of us, right? And we're responsible for that. So I take that burden and go, not only my own retirement, but also what are my kids going to inherit? What costs are they going to have? And can I at least leave them a legacy that I started over 10 years ago, and then if I pass it on to them cash free and they own it all, like, how spectacular is that? But at the same time, like, not to get into the weeds too far about it, I want to teach them what they're inheriting, and I want to
Exactly.
right? We gotta teach it to them and not just hand it
Exactly.
to them. But right now, if somebody is the W-2 employee and they're putting money into their 401ks, they've got stock accounts. Like, what is that path versus why should somebody invest in real estate when they already have that going on?
That's a great question, and it's so interesting too because I'm in Miami right now, and I'm in a really there's a really cool gym I go to, and it's kind of like losing weight is not that hard, right? I mean, you can go to a nutritionist or somebody smarter than me, and they can be, you got to spend more calories than you take in, right? You've got to, is it mainly discipline? I just recently lost about 17 pounds. I'm like, once you do it, if you were to put the screws to yourself and say, how do I lose this weight? How do I look better with my shirt off as a guy? And it's not that hard. It's discipline. So the same thing if you're a W-2 person. You're like, the path is so common, I see sometimes. Basically, you're a victim of your own success many times. I talk to these guys, and they're like, I just really got good. I started the job at X. Now I make 2X of what I started with. And then I all of a sudden I found someone that I'd love, and I got married, and then I've always wanted to do something. I've always wanted to do real estate. I just, and my other friends are doing it. I just never thought I could afford it. Then all of a sudden you have one kid, two kids, and all of a sudden you have daycare, and all of a sudden you're like, wait a second, we make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, and we're maxed out. This is not how it was supposed to go. And I just go back to really discipline, and think, what would an older version of you advise you what to do? And that's many times what I think. I've had unfortunately, some deaths in the family or friends and family, and I think, wait a second here. I had a friend that passed away. I told you that, of pancreatic cancer. My brother-in-law passed away. I'm like, wait a second. How do we take care? We've got one body the rest of our life. How do we take care of that? Okay. It's very easy if you understand math and discipline and nutrition. Okay. I want to make sure I have at least X, right? Okay. Let's say you have what, 2 million in your 401k. Okay, great. You're going to take 5% out a year. Okay, great. That's 100 grand. After taxes, it's 80 or less. Okay, so now you're used to living on a quarter million a year, and your 401k is going to pay you 80. This is just retiring on money is just a math problem. So how do I make up the difference and keep my lifestyle the same? It's not hard. It's just math. That's why you have to kind of say, wait a second here. What? And people are like in California, in some areas that have great appreciation. They're like, well, I've got $1 million. My home is worth 1 million or 2 million. Okay. So then what are you going to live in? So anyway, is do the math. And that's the thing, is if you're new to this and you haven't taken action, buying a house in our area is $30,000, $40,000 in down payment funds. Okay. Start the process. It's kind of like I taught my kids how to parallel park. When you do it the first time, you're like, wow, this was fun. you know, do the first one, and it's not that hard. I think I bought 6 houses last week. And not that I'm better than you, it's just that it's my business, of course, but just start the first one and realize, wait a second here. My gross rent is X, my payments Y. This isn't that hard. Do it again and again and again. And before you know it, you have a couple dozen houses, and you're like, wait a second, I don't need to work anymore. There you go. you know? And I'm not saying 401ks are bad. The market's on fire. We've got a more obviously Republican president, more market friendly. We've got, 15% in the stock market last year. That's great. And, but that's why everyone has this euphoria, right? Do the numbers. Things don't go up forever, nor should they, right?
Right, right. All markets change. We can't I think and to that point is that's why we need to diversify first of all. And also we own these assets. These are real assets. It's not some random piece of paper that I don't know that could be devalued because a CEO does something kind of crazy and goes wild and all of a sudden the stock crashes. Like we own it. We control it and we get to decide what we want to do with it. And by the way, we're only putting 25% down. The lender is giving us the money to do the rest. You can't do that with a stock. You can't be like, hey, I only want to put up 20%. You guys pay the rest and I get the full benefits.
Right, right, right. But some of that key, I mean, obviously you can use a margin account and pay 50%, but not in a retirement account, right? So the key though is think about this. If we really were to put the math to this and you say, okay, I'm ready. Okay, you come to Melissa and you're like, okay, listen, all right, listen, I'm getting sick of this. I'm getting sick of the traffic, sick of this, and I don't want my kids to be jerks when they're older. All right, how do I retire on rent? And you say, what do I have to work with? And then Melissa would say, hey, what kind of cash I have to work with? Where are your credits at? What are your goals? Let's reverse engineer this. Okay, right? That's your job, Melissa. You could get down in the nitty gritty and be like, okay, how serious are you? I mean, and then you might say, hey, you've got a company that matches your 401k. Maybe we reduce our contribution up into the match in order to get some more down payment funds or whatever. Maybe we pull some HELOC money. I don't know. You get creative. That's your job. And then say, wait a second. And then you run those numbers and say, that means in 7 years, my wife could retire or something. I got one of your clients might say that. And then I can see we're going to get hit the stomach punch with these college bills, maybe. But okay, after those are done, wait a second here. I can retire, and and all of a sudden when you see that happening, knowing that real estate's just one of the legs on the table, right? But just keep this in mind. It's like when I was younger, it was fun to go to Vegas and be like, oh, wow, I lose money and yay, and drinks are free and blah, blah, blah. But as you get older, you're like, I would rather just go to dinner and a show. I don't really need to lose, all this money.
Right.
As you get older, the shine of some of these things of losing money, my 2 cents, should lose a little bit of their luster, right? Or saying, hey, I remember one guy was raising money and he was very clear. He's like, hey, just so you know, the money you put in here, you've got a really good chance of losing all of it. I'm like, wow, that's honest. And if that's your style, use 1-2% of your capital in those high flyer startups or whatever your style is. But if you hit, 40 or 50 years of age, get your money working in stuff that has a deed that's appraised at that value that you own. That you don't have to believe in a syndication or believe in interest rates to come down or believe in appreciation. You have to say, hey, it cash flows day one and I own it. And my wife and I own it or whatever, or my kids are going to own it. I had a guy that recently paid the taxes on his 401k, recharacterized that into a Roth. So now he bought houses in his former 401k that's now his Roth IRA. And he's like, I just wanted all my money or the money I own I wanted it to be tax free. I'm like, well, that's actually how to do it. Great job. you know? And so when you really realize this stuff, it's easier. And that's really why I built our property management company the way we did it. We did it very, very investor focused because post COVID, people are used to doing podcast or Google Meets or things like that. We don't have to meet everybody and shake their hands. I enjoy that better. I'll be on, I enjoy people so much, but we can do business like this. And so that's why we developed a more online, a virtual property management company. It's worked brilliantly. It saved investors a lot of money.
Okay, so you were telling me something earlier. Thank you for saying all that, by the way. And we were kind of chatting earlier, and you actually told me something new that I hadn't known about you and your company before. So I've known you for over 10 years now, and I learned something new. And so this is great. So it kind of leads into that. So first of all, just to kind of recap everything, you guys. So Michael is an investor himself. He buys these properties. He does this. Then there's a portion of properties that he's like, "Hey, I've got unlimited deals, so I am now going to help investors own these properties." And then he buys them, he rehabs them for you. You're not doing the rehab, you guys. Michael and his team does it. The other part too is Michael does the property management, his team. Maybe not Michael himself, but you can give some more clarity on what you're about to tell us because I know what it is. But his team also has an excellent property management company. And I say with confidence that I have seen it in action. I've seen my clients be a part of your property management company, and it's been absolutely amazing for them. So please tell us about this really cool virtual system that you have with your tenants, because usually we talk about like the investor part, which is awesome. Like, you talk to your investors and you give them all the information, you give them all the data, and I've got all the data on your property management company. By the way, you guys, if you want the data for Michael's property management company, I've got it for you. I've done it. I've asked him the hard questions and I've got it. So just reach out to me, show notes below. I'll get it over to you. But Michael, please tell us about this amazing, unique system you have with your tenants. I've never heard of this before, and I'm just absolutely amazed by it.
So we specialize in Indianapolis, okay? And what has happened is this is I audited all of our records and I found out we were spending too much time on collections, okay? So I said, "Well, how can we fix that?" And so what I did is I moved the collection process before the leasing process. What I mean by that is I've made collections so unsavory that we have Google Meets with the tenants ahead of time, and we let them know that we are what this is the verbatim language. I said, "Hi, Melissa. Welcome to our cozy, family-owned and operated property management company. That said, we do crazy things like answer the phone, but we don't love chasing people for rent. Okay, that's really not what we're a part of. We don't have a lot of staff for that. And so, as long as you pay your rent on time, we're going to get along just fine." And I kind of do a little bit of a parenting thing, like not mean, but you know what I mean? Like that,
Rough,
don't pay late.
tough
And
love,
if you're going to,
little tough love.
well, I just say, "Hey, listen, is no one enjoys chasing people for money." So I was saying, if you can't pay this rent on time, no worries. Let's shake hands and part friends immediately. Pregnant pause. Like you just leave it there. Ding, ding. And then what happens is, again, if someone's renting a house and they're 35 or 40 years old, they may not have read the same Robert Kiyosaki books and all these different things that I have read. Okay, I'm not better or worse. I just spent more time on this. So in that first session, I let them know that we have a home buying program as well. So what that means is, since I rehab homes, between you and I, our goal and we were achieving it. Basically, the average tenant stays 4 years. I'm trying to grow it a little bit to 5 or 6. So we give them a 2 year. We give our investors a 2 year lease. We usually renew that for 2, and we may get another year depending on the tenant. Right? We've had tenants for 10 years. And what I do is I say, when your credit has been improved a little bit, is we'll go ahead and we can talk to you about maybe buying a house. In fact, our property management software, if they elect this, it reports to all 3 bureaus. Okay. So they pay an extra $5 a month to have their on time rent payments report to all 3 bureaus. And we've seen, their credit scores improve. And I said, "Okay, great. All right. That's number one." Number two, I didn't tell you about this, by the way. So I'm adding this, which is true, is the bottleneck in property management is maintenance. Because even when my kids, I would tell my kids they can have any car they want when they turn 16, as long as they split it with me. And my son wanted, a Lamborghini. I'm like, "Do you have a quarter million to split it?" So anyway, they ended up with Honda Accords. And even though it's a Honda Accord, it still needs brakes and tires and oil changes. So even though our new tires are new, they still need, every now and again, something gets stuck, in the toilet or whatever it may be. So we have now instituted, we are 6 months now into an AI lady. Her name is Maria. Answer all of our maintenance phone calls. She's run by Microsoft Copilot. We have loaded up almost 400,000 work orders to her. She answers questions. She triages the problems, and then she has a list of vendors which are all internal. Everything we have is internal, but there's plumbing, electric, roofing, sewer, this and that. So she answers all the questions, and then she can talk to the tenant maybe in Spanish and send out an English speaking plumber, if you will. And she organizes everything. You upload the pictures to that, and she manages our billing, and it saved me 3 employees. It's fantastic. And you can yell at her. She doesn't yell back. She doesn't call HR. It's fantastic. I'm totally kidding. Anyway, so then they see this good customer service, but still, for example, there was a lady that she started a new job. And you know how it works. When you start a new job, you could be paid in arrears, right? You got to work 2 weeks, almost 3 weeks before you get that first paycheck. And we have a pretty aggressive late fee policy. We say that up front. We say, "Hey, we have an aggressive late fee policy to make it unsavory to pay late." That was the point. We changed it 3 times until we landed on this one. It's 10% of your rent is due on the 6th, and $10 a day, there's a balance. And so when we go over it, it's not fun at all. And tenants were like, well, can you erase my late fees? And I said, let's do this. So we partnered with an online education company that right now we have 4 courses that our tenants can take at no charge. They are basic financial education courses, credit courses, budgeting courses, things like that. So they are not proctored per se, but they're really, really high level courses. And after you take this course, then a certificate is produced. And that certificate is then sent to our property management company. And then we will credit you back, the tenant that is, for a good portion, if not all, of their late fees. So they think, which we are, tenant focused on them. So they're like, well, I had $400 late fees and I took this course and 300 were reversed. The point is that they're delighted about it. They are now more educated. They now understand they should maybe have an emergency fund. They now are a savvier tenant. They understand these things. Their credit scores are improving. And my property management company is easier. Here's my secret plan. It's easier to manage with smarter tenants, right? They pay more on time. And granted, a lot of the tenants are not going to really buy houses, but I had one already say, hey, I've been with you for 7 years and we want to go ahead and we're saving some down payment funds to go buy a house. And I said, after 7 years, that's a good choice for you. You're 40 years old and congratulations. And I turned the house and we're in an area that we can raise rents either between tenants or with an existing tenant. We can raise rents any amount we want. So I bought a house with an existing tenant, but their rent was really low. I raised the rent 30%. And they said, yeah, I know I've been living in fantasy land. So I raised the rent 30% on the tenant year over year. And they said, yeah, that's what I thought. Because we're not in California. So we can do
Right.
that.
Right.
So maybe it's just the point is that, and we also give all of our tenants a $200 referral fee to refer like-minded individuals to them is what we call that. So, hey, Melissa, we like you. You're a good tenant. You've got a great credit score. So if you have anybody like you or above at the postal office or at the Home Depot management company or at your hospital where you work, is let us know. We want to take care of your friends and family that are at you. I always say this, at your level or above. And I joke and I said, your cousin who's fun to drink with, keep drinking with them, but don't refer them to us. Okay. They're fun on the weekends. We want at your level or above. They just roll their eyes. They're like, oh, I know that cousin. You don't want to rent to them. So we try to have fun with these folks. And then they realize that we're focused on them because folks, think about this. A house is pretty basic, right? It's got 4 walls, probably has a kitchen and a bath, right? People get in the weeds on this stuff. Don't overthink it. It's everyone hopefully lives in some sort of, in the Midwest, we never live in multi-units because you can live in a house for a very, same price, right? So you don't want to listen to someone's music or smell their marijuana if that's not your style, right? Because that's not what families do. Families don't live in multi-units. They live in houses in the Midwest. So houses are better than multi-units and duplexes and triplexes, and they appreciate very, very solidly. So also, I'm an old motorcycle guy. In fact, I race up in Monterey, I used to, at Laguna Seca. And every time you get in a situation, you always want to think how you're going to get out of the situation. So I like single families because when you get in a single family and you want to get out, you're selling to a homeowner usually. It's easy to sell a single family. The exit is very simple. Same thing in racing. If this screws up, how do I get out of this turn or how do I get out of the situation? When you do a multifamily, that's fine. It's a different way to slice it, right? But you're going to exit to a more sophisticated investor that's going to review your spreadsheet and review your Excel spreadsheet. They're not emotional about the tree in the backyard. They can't imagine their dog playing there. Then so they're going to beat you down a little bit. That's fine. That's the business you're in. I just had a lot of joy doing this, and also I very low maintenance and very good rate of return. So I just am focused on the tenants, and it's worked out real, real well for us.
Well, everything you're saying is literally like, I wish that more property management companies did this because we talk about the process is investor focused. You got the property, it's newly renovated, you're getting inspections, repairs, warranties, all the things. Then you have a really awesome property management company and you want to retain the investor and you want the investor to be happy. And then the investor's going to be like so excited they're going to want to buy 5 more properties with you. And all is great. Like that's the process. But when you break it down, I found this fact out years ago. I can't remember where it was, but tenants leave for 2 reasons. The number 1 reason they leave is bad property management. Number 2, change a job, budget, whatever. So if you look at the number 1 reason why tenants leave. Now, when a tenant leaves, Now that's gonna cost me as money as the investor. So I'm like, I don't want my tenant to leave, I want my tenant to stay as long as possible. I don't wanna fix up costs. I don't wanna have to pay the fees to place a new tenant, all the things. So we want that tenant to stay. Most property management companies just kinda stop there and go, I'm investor focused," and they're not being tenant focused. But we have to be tenant focused to be investor focused, right? We've gotta reverse it and actually take care of the tenant.
Yes, yes, yeah. It's so funny when someone's like, "Oh, we sell properties in this area, and we refer you to a dozen property management companies." No, 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 no. That's not. No, you almost want to. My 2 cents is you want to go through that property management company. Let me give you a perfect example. Is Tamra is one of my tenants, and she runs a cleaning business for Airbnbs, which need to be cleaned all the time. She recently was laid up with some sort of surgery. I don't want to say hip surgery or replacement, something like that. And she's very rarely late. And I go, Tamara, what's up? She's like, Michael, I'm feeling, she's just uses bad language. And I said, Tamara, I said, all right, I can, help me help you, Tamara, and I work with her and she paid last month's rent. And literally is I have a couple rehabs that I'm doing right now. And I said, hey, Tamara, can you do me a favor? Can you send your daughter over to my rehabs that I'm doing right now and give me a quote on, I know it's not an Airbnb, but you can clean a house too. I said, can you give me a quote on cleaning these two post rehab? So a post rehab clean is not easy. There could be drywall dust, there could be vents, there could be this, there could be air filters, there could be smells, there could be everything. So it's a deep thing. It's usually 500, $600. Okay. We always do it internally. But I actually am going to have my tenant do that to help her to make sure she pays next month's rent on time. Does that make sense? I mean, it's no, because I want her to get healed and I want to make sure I don't have to yell at her for evictions, but I give her a little bit of work. But that's what we all should do. She's never done me wrong. And that's what I like doing is taking care of these people. Sometimes I remember this one lady, her name is Brittany. She was really struggling because her boyfriend took her laptop and that's what she needed to work as a remote worker. She's like, Michael, I'm just at wit's end. I said, Brittany? I said, where do you work? She goes, well, 10 miles from here, but I'm remote. I said, Brittany, I will pay for your Uber to go downtown, show up and say, I'm working on site and don't take no for an answer. She's like, well, I've never done that. I said, today's the day you're doing it. She goes downtown, she does this, and they see the effort. They don't see her, not to be a parent, by whining and crying that my lap. No, no. You show up and you get it done. She went, got it. They gave her a new laptop. You know what I mean? You just love these people through a little bit of this management. It doesn't happen all the time. This is 5% of the stories, right? 95% of the time they don't talk to me and they just pay their rent. But as long as you take care of these folks when it happens, and then I raise the rent on them a little bit because I always say taxes go up, right? And so I raise the rent, but they have the confidence knowing I'm there. My turns are less because they know I'm focused on them, and they go from, it all works out. It all works out.
The word that I'm thinking of is respect. As a parent, when we my number one goal as a parent is not only to teach them to respect themselves, but to respect others, respect boundaries, treat each other with respect. And it goes both ways. I, as a parent, how can I expect them to treat me with respect if I don't treat them as respect as humans? And so that's what this reminds me of is like you're treating them like humans with respect. And there are boundaries and you've drawn those boundaries and you give it to them at the beginning. You're like, "Hey, we're having this meeting up front. This is my boundaries. This is how you can respect me. And by the way, I'm going to respect you, but you got to respect me too."
You got it. You got it. And you know what? It's really that's why I gotta say this too, so is that these type of property management companies, they're very difficult to scale. So if you find somebody that has 1,000 or 2,000 doors, you can't give this type of service. You know, it's kind of like I remember I went to Miami has a boat show. It's really, really, really cool. But it's one of the best 58th, third annual or something like that. And I went to the big convention center. You can always tell the people that own their own business because they're in front of that convention table saying, hey, how are you? Do you own a boat? Do you own this? Do you want to buy a new anchor or whatever they're selling at the thing? And then you can always tell the people that are work for the man, if they will. They're sitting behind the table, they're on their phone, and they don't really care. They're just there because, I'm that owner operator and I'm out there. But that said, Melissa, you help me fill these doors. We're not going to grow that big. We want to stay organic. We don't take any doors that we haven't managed, that we haven't rehabbed. Literally 97% of the houses, we take our homes that we've rehabbed. And here's my secret. Why? Because they're really well rehabbed and they don't take a lot to manage. So I don't want your lipstick on a pig rehab. Mine are good rehabs. So they're easy to manage. So now I got a bunch of houses that are easy to manage. Now I got a bunch of tenants that know what to do, right? My staff knows what to do. I've got an AI assistant that answers all my phone calls on maintenance and everything's happy. Now I've got an enterprise value. Now I've got a business that I am enjoying. And that's, you don't see many property management companies that really enjoy what they do. And we do. We do. We love what we do. And it's growing and people are happy. And literally half of our companies go to investors that want to add to their portfolio.
Yeah. So thank you for saying all of that. And the point that I'm going to make about this is kind of something that I tell my clients all the time. And I've said this before on this podcast, but the number one question that I wish investors would ask me is this, and it is, where are the most successful investors investing? It kind of goes back to the beginning of this conversation is like, let's
Yeah.
mimic where people are successful. And for me, I have the data. I have the information because I have been working with people like you, Michael, for 10 years. And my clients are building portfolios and they're coming back and they're telling me information and they're telling me things. And then we get to really look at their numbers. And there are, I would say, the biggest cost. So going back to people being really analytical, like the engineer that's like always super analytical, like, oh, people can be their own worst enemy because 'cause they're gonna analyze the market and the house and the this and that and the spreadsheet and, I've gotta make sure that I put this aside for, assumptions and maintenance costs and vacancy, and I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, but, like, you don't know what." I have the hardest time with assumptions because there's no way to predict it 100%. Like, you can say, sure, let me put 5% for maintenance and let me put 5% for vacancy, but it's not like you're gonna come back and look at the spreadsheet ever again. Like, we close on the property, the spreadsheet kind of goes in the trash, and it is what it is. We have to deal with the property in the time that it is right now. So my point to all of this is, if somebody can be successful on the property management side, that is the golden secret. Like, that is the piece that people ignore. They analyze that pro forma to death, and they don't actually look at the true property management numbers and the stats. And the only way they're getting that is to ask the property manager. Like, go to you and be like, "Hey, Michael, what are all the things you're doing to keep a tenant, to keep my costs low?" All that stuff, right?
Right. Right. Yeah, and if you, like I said, is that when you look at those numbers and that, also you might be older and like say, you know what? Actually, I want better houses. I want this. I know I could make more money with C classes and that worse areas, but I want to take my wife or my spouse or my partner, and I want to be like, you know what? I'm happy to own that. I just did one like that. It wasn't the best numbers, but I owned it for my personal portfolio. It's a little bit outside what I usually buy, but I have a wonderful Latin tenant in there. I love Latin tenants. They're my favorite. And I fix things I usually don't fix because I wanted them to stay there for a long time. I fixed the fence. I did this, did the tree, did this, did the garbage, all this other stuff. And they literally have not called me except they wanted the carpet changed on the stairs. And I walked into the home just oddly because I wanted to shake hands. And I looked and I said, absolutely. What color? Yes. I mean, it was good, but it wasn't great. And I saw a little baby crawling around, and I want that baby on more comfortable stairs, or whatever. Easy, and you just do that kind of thing, and it's just awesome. So I agree with that. And also, I always say to investors, and please, I need you to remind your investors of this. If you ever want to take a look at our operation, remember, we buy plane tickets for people, no problem, anywhere in the country. I always say a little caveat, make sure neither of us are wasting each other's time, but come on in and see the operation, and come on in and drive around in the truck for the day and see this. And these are the 3 we're rehabbing. These are the 4 that are done. And this is this, and this is the capital. And this is where the sports teams play. And this is the nice restaurants. And this is where we don't buy. It's too expensive. And you know what I mean? And just get a feel for it. And it reminds me of this, is why we do these homes the way we do them. A little analogy I use is that if you and I, Melissa, were to get together and say, hey, we're going to build an Uber business and this is the best vehicle for it, we do a Toyota Camry or Toyota Prius. So our homes are not meant to be beautiful, gorgeous, 4 bedroom, 3.5 bath homes. They're meant to be workhorses to kick off cash flow. And when I retire, I'm going to have dozens and dozens and dozens of these is the goal, right? And I don't want to say I'm bulletproof. That sounds arrogant, but I'm gonna have a high level of confidence that hey, I know that if I want to jump on a yacht or jump on a ship or jump wherever I want to jump or serve, like my business partner wants to be on like a recovery team. That's his dream. Like get a truck and a trailer and go to like a flood zone and be able to help people with his construction skills. He's 70 years old and they have a flood. I want to fix your house for you or something like that. That's what he wants to do. I'm like, I love it, brother. You're done, you're retired, you want to help others, knowing that you're making thousands every month and your house is paid. You know what I mean? That's your dream. Let me help support it, whatever it may be. So, but I got to say, talk is cheap. You got to get people to move. You got to get people to do one or two or get scaled. If you only have one house and you have a vacancy that's 100% vacant, you know, believe in the process. I always say race to four is what I say. I don't know what you say, Melissa, but you get four and now we've got some synergy.
Yeah, yeah. I agree. Race to 4, I like how you said that. Yeah, 4 or 5 houses is finally where you can kind of like, my happiest clients are people that own, above 4 or 5 doors because, like you said, you're not as stressed or worried about, at one point, one house will have a vacancy, one point will have one house will have a maintenance. Like, there's no denying that. That's the first thing I tell people is I'm like, "Look, if you can't handle a vacancy, you shouldn't be investing." End of story. We can't control, we're not, we're not magical. We can't just have those kind of powers. It will happen at some point, and so we gotta be prepared for that. But when you've got, like, 4 or 5 houses, then you're not as stressed about it, and you're like, "That's cool, my other houses are, the cash flow is kinda covering that for me. I'm okay, I can get through it." And then the goal is to kinda get to that, 10 number is kind of the number that we talk about just because that's where we can really start doing something with it, really seeing the magic of taking time off, retiring your spouse, future retirement planning. That's where that number gets really exciting.
Yeah, yeah. Like for example, let's say I've got a house right now, the rent is 1600 and the mortgage payment's 1100. Okay. So if there's $100 repair, you're like, what was that for? Now, fast forward 5 years, 6 years, or whatever, that's up to you. I've got 10 doors and I've got whatever the numbers are. I've got 15, 16 grand a month in rent. I've got 10,000 in payment and we have $200 in maintenance. Okay. You know what I mean?
Cool.
You're like, okay. Yeah, all right. I have to do an oil change on my car too this month. I mean, this is normal. It's okay. And I scale more by having your investors, my clients have more doors. I don't need a nickel and dime people on leaky sinks. I don't care about that.
Right,
Get it fixed, whatever, buy more, you
right,
know?
right.
In fact, in this new company post COVID is we don't even have office space on purpose. Now we have co-working space. So we share office space with, some other entrepreneurs, but people didn't want to come to the office. They're like, I have to take a half day off work to sign a lease. What year is this? No, we've already had a meeting. We've already underwrote. We've already talked to your existing landlord. We've already talked to your employer. We've already pulled your credit. We've had conversations. We've already had a face-to-face on Google Meet. We're going to send you a DocuSign lease, and meet you out at the property. We don't need you don't need to take a half day off work for that, right? What year is that? And what are we going to fax you the lease? Is that next? Come on now.
I love that too because yeah, there's a bunch of those stuffy old property management companies that have been around forever and like I can only just imagine like people just being like what is actually happening here? We can move with the times a lot quicker and a lot faster and that's the beauty of what you've done and why so many clients, investors and tenants, which I can add that and tenants in there because gosh, that is just so important is we're taking care of 2 people, and it goes back to, kind of what you said, and I'll kind of this will be the last thing I say, and then I'm gonna kind of hand the last words over to you, but people investors this happened recently, somebody was looking at a house and they go, "Oh, but I wouldn't live there." And I'm like, "Well, wait a minute, hold up. Let's back up. That's fine. You don't have to live there. That's not the point of this. We are creating a safe home that's been newly renovated that is energy efficient. So, number one, we brought up this house to great code standards. We're creating safe and affordable housing as an investor. You are not a slumlord. Nobody wants you to be a slumlord. And like you said, we're treating people with respect. You are going above and beyond and teaching them, hey, this is how you can improve your credit and maybe buy a house. Like we're kind of helping build you up. But also while you're here with us, you are safe, you're being taken care of. And so to the investor who says it's only a place that I would want to live and I need a 3 bedroom, 2 bath, and I'm like, okay, but that person
You're not
cares.
getting them, you're not getting the purpose of it.
Right,
Yeah.
the renter that
Yeah.
we're after, there's a fine line, like, sure, if you want that A class, go for it. You're not gonna cash flow anything or maybe very little if you are. There's this middle ground where we're trying to find the tenant who needs the rent, the affordable rent, it's close to their job, it's, in a location where their family lives, and it's at a price that they can afford. That is who we're after.
Right, right, right. It reminds me of this is 100 years ago, I did a bunch of network marketing stuff, selling lotions and potions and diets and, all that other stuff. And then now I'm into making money when I sleep. Okay. And one of the things I was very interested in is a gym membership. So the top gym membership, the most expensive would be like a Lifetime Fitness, or in Miami, it'd be like Anatomy or Equinox, right? It's $100 to $400 a month. Okay. Right. The middle would be like an LA Fitness or like a Gold's Gym or things like that, where it's 30, 40, $50 a month. The most profitable model is the Planet Fitness model, right? The Planet Fitness model is Netflix, right? It's $15 a month, $10. It's more expensive if you want the tanning. But me personally, I would not work out. I work out 4 times a week. I don't enjoy personally, my taste is not Planet Fitness. Planet Fitness is based on a non-use model. 90+% of them don't use it. Okay. However, they make the most money. So are you in a, if you're investing in a gym, you should invest in a Planet Fitness. They make the most money pound for pound. Their EBITDA is better than the rest, I believe. So when you follow us and we're into replacing your full-time income, follow our lead a little bit. And you said this, it's very interesting. I used to look, I think when my dad taught me a little bit about business, it was, you said the word mimic other investors. You said mimic. I use the hardcore, we're just going to copy. We're just going to copy success. Okay. I remember I wasn't very well dressed and I started making a little bit of money. And I just would go to a store and I'm like, I like everything on that mannequin. I want everything on that mannequin, but my waist is a little bigger than that, or something like that, right? And I just bought everything. I like, that's what I like. And so if someone is coming to us, and we have plenty of examples, we can introduce you dozens of people that make 5, 10 grand a month, 20 grand a month in rent. Well, what are they doing? And just copy success, especially if you're coming to the game a little bit late. Maybe you have had a job transfer. Maybe you had it punching you got a black eye from something in the world, right? Whether it's a divorce, whether it's a job transfer, a death in the family. Okay. Now we're not playing victim role. You're responsible for the results. You're responsible for the bottom right hand corner of your personal financial statement and what you make without a job. What is it? And can you live off that right now? And if not, be accused of taking action. Same thing with your health. Like I'm in a very healthy area right now in Miami, and I'm just like, wow, I'm like 200 pounds. I'm the fattest person here. No, I'm kidding, but it's just like very health focused, right? I need to work on this. But just take responsibility for it. Let us help you. Or if you come to me or Melissa or I, is if you have a plan or you don't have a plan, say, hey, I don't have a plan. I'm 45, I'm 55, I'm 35. What would it take? If you were my best friend, what would you advise me? And then we will help you. And then let's get a base hit underneath your belt. And you're like, oh, that wasn't that hard. Yes, that's the point. And then go from there. If someone ever comes to me and they say, I want to buy 10 houses right off the bat, I don't love that conversation. I'm going to start with 2 or 3 or 4, right? Unless it's a 1031 exchange, let me get used to what's going on, your property management, your software, your communication, whatever, because I'm interested in long-term, relationships. I don't need your money right now. Let's try this out so you're comfortable with it. That's what I like.
100%. I absolutely I second all of that, and I agree with it. I literally have a client right now that I'm speaking to that's like, "I've got money over here, and I've got money in my 401k, and I've got money in a HELOC, and I've got money in my savings, and, build out the system for me." And I'm like, "Cool, let's build it out, but by the way, we're gonna build it one piece at a time. We're not gonna do it all at once." Like, I can't even imagine trying to get somebody to buy 20 properties at once when it's actually unnecessary, and it's really stressful, and it's just a big piece. We got to build this out one piece at a time. Like, well, let's do the vision. Like the vision is there. We will get you retired at 20 properties, 20K a month. Like that will happen. But we got to take action and build it out one at a time. Let's you know. we can ramp it up, but you gotta take the one your first property, your second property, third property, fourth property, see how you like it, let it simmer, let it how does it feel? How do you like being an investor? And then let's go for it. So,
Right.
yeah,
And I'll close with this. There's nothing better to exactly how you plan. I just got a text while I was playing pickleball, which is a great sport, by the way, Melissa. You should play more. Is that is that he's like, hey, I just bought Nelson from you, and it's worked exactly how you said. I'm ready for another. I mean, that's it. I go, Anthony, you know what? I've got two more that I have two more that are finishing. I kind of know what he likes. And I thought he was 35, but he's not, he's 45. So my strategy changes just a little bit for him. And so I have two or three houses that are going to be right in his wheelhouse. And that's it. That's the fun part of what I do. People call you up and say it's played out exactly how you said. He's like, yeah, I had $100 in maintenance, just like you said. I'm like, good. There's going to be more maintenance. I'm kidding, but when and it's fine. So hey, run with us. Indianapolis is my favorite city, obviously, as far as this is concerned. And really take your time out and meet with Melissa. I've seen the clients that she has are very well educated and they have a path and they have a plan. And feel free to, get referred to me. Be happy to help you guys out.
amazing. Thank you so much. And for all of you guys listening, I want you to head to the show notes. You're going to have links in there. You're going to have a link to reach out to me. And all you have to do is say, hey, I want to talk to Michael, and I will hook you up with Michael. So let's do that. So thank you again, Michael, for your time today. It's always a pleasure. There's so many golden nuggets in there, and I'm going to have you back again because we didn't even cover a fraction of what we should be covering.
All righty. Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you. Bye.